Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are back with another of these newer Recur releases, and this time we've got ourselves a very cool one. It's the first time we've had a pterosaur in this newest line, this newest style of much better Recur figures. As you can see, we have Buckland, the Dimorphodon, and this is almost like giving me Collect A vibes when it comes to this release, because the figures overall have been very nicely sized, but this pterosaur, from, judging from the box, seems to be maybe the biggest figure so far, or definitely close to it. And I know how Collect A loves to release those larger, like super deluxe pterosaurs once in a while, which I personally greatly enjoy. So pretty intrigued to see what the size of this Dimorphodon is once we pop it here out of the box. The packaging is pretty much the standard style, where you have this really nice yellowish tone for the box and then an image of the figure. We can also see the Recur name up there, and if you turn it around, just some random info and stuff, pretty much the usual stuff that you would find on Recur releases. So I'm gonna go ahead, pop this box open, and check it out. So first of all, you have a card included, a collector's card, which does show a really cool image of the Dimorphodon, and then here on the back some information, and actually you can see it is 1/4 scale. I did want to state that there was a card in the Dilophosaurus release as well, and I actually just completely missed it when I was pulling it out of the box, so I did want to show that off to you guys, and let you know that there is a card with the Dilophosaurus also. And here is our Dimorphodon, and it's not perfectly centered, I'll tell you that much, but it is definitely a very large version of a Dimorphodon, so that's one thing that, if you're into larger pterosaurs, like the larger Collect A ones, this one might be a fun one to add to your collection just based on that. But it is absolutely one of the most striking pterosaurs. Look at the colors on this. Those colors really make this look like a kind of tropical Dimorphodon, and it just looks so cool. I think the only thing that really could have helped this one, and it's something that I say quite often when it comes to these Recur figures, is like a wash, because if you had a wash on this, like a dark wash of some kind, it would have kind of like made it just amp up the details and amp up the realism of the figure. But even without the wash, it is still by far one of the coolest looking Dimorphodon figures that I have ever seen. And when I say it is larger, it's not quite the size of the Collect A version. The Collect A version is pretty darn big, but it's still decently sized, no doubt about that. So I'm going to readjust the camera here just a little bit, and then we'll bring it up and start taking a closer look. So starting here in the head sculpt, you can instantly see how nice the skin texture looks here in the face. Like, look at how vibrant that skin texture is. The newer Recur figures have some of the best detail that I've seen on prehistoric figures as of late, with just how good and how vibrant it is and how much it pops. And honestly, with each and every one of their newer figures that I get, I become more and more addicted to them. They are just so fun to collect and are easily some of my favorite prehistoric figures out there right now. That's why I'm really hoping to see them reveal more soon, because it's been a little bit since they have. But we can see the nostrils right there. Again, as I already mentioned, the skin texture, and as you move back here into the eye area, you can see the eye area itself nicely sculpted, painted with a yellow for the eye and then a black pupil. We can also see some orangish tones for the majority of the head of our Dimorphodon, with some greens that just kind of stripe through and sort of outline certain areas. And then as you move back closer into the eye area, that really vibrant green overtakes the majority of that area, of the eye area, and then pretty much the rest of the upper side of the figure moving forward. But you can also see again that orangish tone up here, and how nice and smoothly it transitions into the green with almost like a little yellow in between. And we can also see pycnofibers picking up as you move back further into the head. As you move into the lower jaw, we can see a nice light tone, kind of like an off-white down here, and again a mixture of skin texture as well as pycnofibers leading along the lower part of the jaw. As you move back down into the throat, you'll see tons of pycnofibers as well. We do have the mouth sculpted in an open position. We see the teeth all over the place, which are actually pretty nicely painted. You can see some of them aren't absolutely perfect, but for the most part the teeth are painted pretty nicely with a nice sort of a white tone, and there is a gorgeous gloss coat on them. You can see the light kind of reflecting off of the teeth, which I think also looks really nice. Moving into the inside of the mouth, Try to get a spot where we can really get a good angle of it. We see a nice pinkish tone, but also a darker tone there for the tongue, and the tongue itself is sculpted pretty nicely. Also kind of leads up there on the inside of the mouth, and the detail on the inside of the mouth on the upper side also looks really good. Like if you added just a wash, like a reddish wash or something in there, you could really make the detail pop on the inside of the mouth. And again, man, it is so nicely sculpted. Also, there is a nice gloss coat for the inside of the mouth, which is a good thing for sure as well. Also, leading back, you see a brown that kind of leads from the eye and stripes down here into the neck, but then we have that green pretty much overtaking the majority of the upper side of our Dimorphodon. I am going to hold this at just a little bit of a distance from the camera because my camera tends to like react oddly to certain colors, and I don't know why. So when it does that, I just kind of have to hold it back a little bit further. But moving down, we can really see the structure of the neck and throat and everything, and I think that looks really good. The again, pycnofibers are super crisp and really well sculpted, but also just generally pop so nicely on the sculpt of the figure. That greenish tone just stands out, and stands out in a big way, making this, in my opinion, one of the most striking pterosaurs that I have in my collection. As you lead down, not only can you see the throat on the underside, but we can also see the chest and everything of the Dimorphodon moving down. We transition to like some yellowish tones as you move out into the wings of the pterosaur, and again continue on with all of the pycnofibers pretty much following along that area, of course, except for the skin of the wings itself. As you lead along the back, we still see the spinal column following down there, and again, I'm going to try to get a little bit closer just for a moment. Hopefully it doesn't mess with the camera too bad, but we can see how nice those pycnofibers look. Like they are really, really crisp on this figure, and you'll see them kind of get smaller as you move out into the wings here, as you follow along like the arm area, but you can see they still look super crisp as you lead down the entire way. Also, as we move down into the fingers and everything, we do transition to kind of like a orangish brown, sort of like a wash. Like it looks pretty cool with the way that that's applied. And we can also take note to the fact that the claws are painted, but they did a strange thing with this when it comes to the paintwork of the claws, and they only really paint the tips. Like you can see that the majority of the claw is kind of like an orangish tone. I think you'll see it a little better over here. And they just painted the tips of the claws black. So that's a pretty interesting idea. I don't know exactly what the reasoning was for doing it that way, but I think it's, you know, a little bit different than what you usually see. Kind of fun just to have something a little bit different. But as you move through the again, the wings, we can see a little variation of color. You have a little bit more of like a vibrant orange, not super vibrant, but definitely more so than the yellowish tone that we have on the rest of the wing. As you lead out here toward the tips, and you'll see that orangish tone just sporadically show up throughout the course of the wings, but again, they are primarily like a yellowish tone of color. The skin detail, again, looks absolutely excellent as you move through. There's just a ton of very impressive skin detail. This one would be a really good figure to actually repaint because the fine detail on it is super, super high quality. As you move out here toward the back of the figure, you can see that nice little tail coming out here for the Dimorphodon. Again, absolutely coated with pycnofibers. I am surprised to see that the tail is as short as it is, because I assumed, you know, Dimorphodon has a pretty long tail as far as I'm aware, for the most part, so I'm intrigued to find out why the tail is so short on this one and what the reasoning was for giving it a shorter tail, because it is significantly shorter than any other Dimorphodon that I've seen in the past. So something I'm just unfamiliar with. If you guys have any info as to why the tail is so short on this one, I would definitely be intrigued to know. We can also see more of those pycnofibers, a little bit finer as far as they go, but more of the pycnofibers moving down through the course of the leg. We can get a bit of a feel for the musculature there of the pterosaur as well. And again, we transition to that orangish tone moving down into the feet. We could see scoots moving down the toes, and again, the claws painted the same way, where they really only paint like the tips of the claws black, which again is definitely an interesting idea, but I think it works for the figure. As you move along the underside the entire way through, you'll see pycnofibers galore. The stomach and everything down here definitely looks like it's a very healthy and fairly well-fed Dimorphodon. Definitely doesn't look starving or shrink-wrapped or anything, which is also nice to see. This leg is in a slightly different position, but just barely more so than the other one. Just kind of spread a little, stretched actually, I should say, out a little bit further than what we see in the other one. And you can see that reflected when it comes to the skin detail here and the way it's kind of like bunching up right here in front of the knee as well. Pretty much the same positioning for the wing over here, though, and the front limb here is kind of back just slightly more so than the other one. These like little areas here of the wings were actually kind of held in with rubber bands, so I don't know if they're meant to be held into the body so far or if they're meant to be out here like this a little bit more, and maybe they've just kind of warped in transit. But I'm going to have to look at the promo images of it a little bit closely and see, and maybe I could try to use like the hot water, cold water trick to make sure that they are sitting in the position that they're supposed to be in, because I actually think it looks pretty nice like this, with the wings just out a little bit further. But either way, that is an absolutely spectacular Dimorphodon, and definitely one of the largest that I have in my collection. The second largest right behind Collect A. Actually no, that may not be true. I think I have a Dimorphodon from Dinomania, which again, they've got a pretty big one as well. But as far as this one goes, size-wise, you are looking at, I would actually say about 10 inches or around 25.5 centimeters. And the highest point would actually be the wing at a little bit over 6.5 inches or around 17 centimeters. For a size comparison, there's Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon in the Collect A human being next to our Recur Dimorphodon. And you can see again that the figure is definitely quite sizable next to all of these others and could potentially take down a T-Rex if it was this similar in size to Mr. Papo T-Rex. And then just for a comparison to really give you a good feel for how large this figure is, here is the Recur Dilophosaurus that I had just recently reviewed next to the Dimorphodon, and look at the size difference. That Dimorphodon at 1/4 scale is definitely quite large. Here is a comparison with the Collect A Dimorphodon I was just speaking of, though this is one that I had repainted quite a few years ago. But you can see again that the Collect A one is definitely a good bit larger, especially when it comes to length compared to the newer Recur version, but they do look super cool next to each other, I can definitely say that much. And then just a few random comparisons. Here we have a Mattel Velociraptor and Dilophosaurus next to our good bit larger Dimorphodon. We also have the Collect A Deluxe Dimetrodon, which you can see is a bit smaller. The Safari Ltd Utyrannus, again, just trying to cover a few figures that somebody might have, just in case they haven't had any that I've shown off so far. The Schleichdioblaceratops, which as well is a good bit smaller. And then finally, the Recur Tyrannosaurus Rex. This is the newer T-Rex that they had released next to the Dimorphodon, just to give you one final idea of the size. Again, there's not all that many figures that I think would compare well with this. Most Dimorphodons are going to be significantly smaller, so the only real one that I could think of that would be similar in comparison that many people would have been the Collect A one, which I already did a comparison with. So hopefully if you are a Recur collector, the comparison here with the T-Rex will help. So this brand new Recur Dimorphodon in 1/4 scale is another excellent figure from them. The sculpt on this is absolutely fantastic. It is just extremely highly detailed and gorgeous from head to tail. It is definitely one of the best Dimorphodon sculpts that I have ever seen, especially when it comes to fine detail. The only downside to mine is it did warp a little bit in the packaging, and you could really see that when it's just kind of standing there. I'm probably going to have to do a little hot water, cold water to kind of get it back into position like it should be, but that's just a minor issue as far as I'm concerned. The only other thing as far as the sculpt goes that I kind of question is how short the tail is on this one, because as far as I know, Dimorphodon did have a pretty long tail, and the tail is quite short for this version, but maybe I'm just not familiar with some new information on the species or why this one has such a short tail. I don't know exactly what the reasoning is, but definitely interesting. The paintwork on this as well is really nicely done. It's got a very cool kind of tropical color scheme, which I really like. I think the transitions back and forth are nice and smooth. The only thing that it really is lacking would have been a wash. I feel like if they had applied like a dark wash to this, or like a grayish wash or something to really just help amp up the detail, it could have really brought this detail out in a beautiful way and also added a lot of life to the figure. And I think that's the only thing that it's missing, because otherwise it is a phenomenal Dimorphodon and definitely a figure I very much so recommend grabbing. So if you are interested, I will include a link in the description to where you can purchase this, again on AliExpress, because that's where I purchased mine. Unfortunately, it hasn't shown up on Amazon or anything quite yet. Hopefully it will at some point in the near future. But again, until then, you can still grab it on AliExpress, so check that link, grab it if you want it, and like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.